Good morning, everyone. My name is Austin Avery. I am the inside sales manager of the Colorado Rapids. My brief background is I started in inside sales at the New York Yankees, then got promoted to groups and suite sales, where I did that for about 4 seasons total at the Yankees. Then transitioned over to the NFL and worked for the Dallas Cowboys new stadium, AT&T, finished out that project selling seat licenses. Then I spearheaded the LA Rams, LA Chargers new stadium project called SoFi Stadium out in LA that's going to be completed here hopefully in August. And now out here in Denver looking for the next executives of the future. So appreciate you guys all being here.
Cool. We'll move it over to Matt now.
Yeah, I'm Matt Schroll. I am the Director of Business Development with the Houston Dynamo and Dash, both MLS and NWSL squads down here. Been here since July, oversee all of the new season ticket and premium sales. That said, but prior to getting here, I used to be in the nice area of Philadelphia with the Philadelphia Union, overseeing the inside sales program for 2 years. And before that, as a rep, I was with the Indiana Pacers in the NBA for 4 years, 1 in inside sales and 3 in group sales.
Cool. We'll move it over to Darrell now.
Thank you, Andrew. So my name is Darrell Redman. I'm the Inside Sales Senior Manager for the Philadelphia Union. So I was first an intern for the Philadelphia Union in the box office and completed my internship and actually started my career as a fan service rep with the Philadelphia Union. Worked as 7 years as a fan service rep and recently took a promotion as Matt left to go to Houston. I took in his role and became the inside sales manager. So just my duty is recruit and also train new reps and also reps that might be looking to get into sales and send them onto the path to other departments.
All right. Next up is Brittany.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I'm Brittany Lugiano. My title is Manager of Premium Season Ticket Services at the Philadelphia Union. So I originally started my career at the Philadelphia Union as an account executive, worked my way up to there, joined the fan services team, left the Philadelphia Union for a short time where I was inside sales manager for the Philadelphia Flyers. Couldn't keep me away and came back to the Philadelphia Union, where I'm at my current role on the premium side of services.
And last but not least, we're going to start off with Mark.
All right, guys, welcome. My name is Mark Evans. I'm the Senior Director of Season Ticket Sales and Services with the Union. Nice big Union theme here amongst the panel. Joined the Union almost 11 years ago. So the team started in 2010. I was able to get on board in 2009 as a ticket sales manager. Just kind of worked my way up to the Senior Director position at that point. Prior, worked for the Philadelphia Soul of the Arena Football League back in the Bon Jovi and Ron Jaworski days, which was a lot of fun. But when the league went away and took a hiatus, luckily this job opened up with the Union, and I've been with the club ever since. So looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all of you kind of sharing a little background about yourself. So start off with me. I'm one of the moderators of the NUSM 460 class. My name is Angela Rosa, and I'm a senior. And we'll move it on to Alex.
What's going on, guys? My name is Alex Rucci. I'm a senior as well from South Jersey, and I'm a member of the 460 class as well. And Cory, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, guys. So my name is Cory Ruggiero, a member of the Neumann 460 class. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. And without further ado, let's get to some questions. So to start off, let's talk about just overall the impact sales plays in the MLS, and kind of how you guys go about the sales process, maybe getting like the 6-step process or what you guys do to tackle leads or find leads.
Cool. I'll jump in and start with that one. Here at the Rapids, we kind of really initiate a big 6-step process on kind of teaching and educating the sales process. So it starts out with one, engaging the prospect, learning how to do an introduction, having that shot clock of 10 to 30 seconds of really grabbing their attention and being able to hold that conversation. So we use a tool called PVT, which is pace, tone, volume, to kind of remind you of those points to go out throughout the call. Next, we're looking to set the agenda. We're always looking for that purpose of the reason why we're picking up the phone. So the reason for my call is I saw you came out to a game against the Union last September. And then we go into a benefit statement. Step 3 is asking open-ended questions. Really, the best part of sales is we get to talk to people about sports. So we want to have that conversation, humanize it, right? We're going to learn a lot about them, but what are they going to learn about us? And so how we ask a lot of those questions is with open-ended questions: who, what, where, when, how, and why, as well as teaching you a little bit about an IMI statement, a short story that involves sights, smells, to really put almost that prospect in your shoes of kind of relating to them in some aspect. Fourth step is we're looking to transition to product knowledge and really shoot for that appointment. Every time we pick up the phone, we should be aiming to try to meet face-to-face. The most successful salespeople in life are going to be the ones that get in front of the most people. So recapping the conversation. Hey, Mark, based on what you've told me, blank, blank, blank. Then we're going to transition into my favorite part of sales is handling objections and creating the urgency. I teach a model called the LC model. You have probe and clarify. There's all kinds of different things out there. And that's why sales and sports is fun. Everyone does it a little bit differently, and you can learn a different skill set that way. But we're constantly trying to create that urgency to get them in front of us or to purchase a membership. And then last but not least, we're looking to close, asking for the appointment. Is it a sale? What are the next steps? We're always looking to leave a conversation having a game plan. It's not just out in the open. We'll see what happens. It's no, we're going to have a call at Wednesday at 4:30 or Thursday at 3:30. How's that sound, Matt? And then we're always looking for say, hey, you just got great 4 seats. Welcome to the Union or Rapids family. Who do you want to sit next to you all season? So it's really what we process on that foundational 6-step process is what we look to teach in the MLS.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Darrell, Matt, anyone else, would you guys like to add to that? Kind of how you guys both go about that process in different ways with different clubs?
I think for us, it's a similar model. It's different tweaks and whatnot. Like we handle objections much differently. Obviously, as Austin mentioned, everybody does them a little bit differently. For us, I think the big sticking point for MLS clubs is more of trying to figure out that like why and utilize that against somebody to rationalize why you're spending money, right? Nobody's going to call them up and be like, hey, Mark, you want to buy this thing for $1,000? And Mark on the other end is never going to be like, hell yeah, here's my credit card, right? So for us, as Austin mentioned with the open-ended questions, it's to get the conversation rolling, but it's also to give you a lot of information about an individual so that, if I am pitching Darrell a product, I'm trying to pull on his emotional heartstrings to rationalize why he should spend X amount of dollars, right? That is, to me, something that was hugely different. I think, I don't know, Austin, you may be able to speak to this because you were in baseball and football from that standpoint, but in the NBA, like especially in Indiana, if anybody's ever been to Indiana, I feel bad for you, but in Indiana, I mean, everybody has a basketball hoop in the front yard, so it's not hard to have a conversation about the Pacers or the NBA. It was more of trying to monetize a fan base, where in our world with this 6-step process, and I know this is how we did it in Philly as well, the mentality was more of like, you're going to continue to grow a fan base. And oh, by the way, money comes along with it. But that's kind of that mentality where the league hasn't been around that long compared to the other leagues. So that was always kind of the mindset of going into a call was, yeah, you're selling, but you're more like building something much bigger, and building a league that is growing and on the rise, and doing that by kind of pulling on somebody's emotional heartstrings to rationalize why they should spend X amount of dollars.
Yeah, to Matt's point, I think what's really cool is, being the MLS just starting 25 years, and the NFL just celebrated 100 to show you how drastic different those leagues are. Now you're seeing a lot of people come from the NFL to the MLS, and some of my friends are going, wow, it is a different kind of work ethic, a different kind of value, and creating urgency and really growing the game in the MLS than it is the NFL or NBA, so to speak. So you really it's kind of like Matt said, that fun and really intriguing way to know you're not just growing a team, but you're growing a sport nationwide.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll kind of ask this question of Brittany and Mark now. On the since you guys are on the service side, once they have picked up these prospects, gotten butts and seats, then do you guys do on the service side to retain these customers and make sure they have a pleasant experience once they're in the stadium and then after they leave?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially what it all boils down to, is making sure that they're enjoying what they've been sold. So Austin, Matt, Darrell go out and they sell the product. Brittany and I have a job of making sure that we fulfill on that and make sure that everything is kind of followed through with. So the biggest thing for us is making sure that they're getting value. So adding in some additional benefits, whether that's in their season ticket package or on game days themselves. Luckily, we've got a great coaching staff in Philadelphia that allow us to do some extra things on game days, like chalk talks with our head coach. That is a benefit that a season ticket member generally wouldn't get if you're in some of the other leagues around the country. So we have to make sure that we're kind of going above and beyond to prove that we have value here in Philadelphia and value in being a season ticket member. So our staff's kind of day to day is reaching out to those season ticket members and getting feedback from them, making sure that they are getting everything that they want out of a package, and then taking their feedback as well. So what works for one season ticket member that's a single season ticket holder in our supporter section might be different than what somebody that has a family of 4 in our club seats. It might be a little bit different. So Brittany and our fan services reps have a job to make sure that we're hearing everything from them and kind of getting as much feedback as possible.
I think to add to that, we're in a unique situation, unlike other sports teams, where you have your avid soccer fans who are diehard, but you also have a lot of people who are jumping on board with soccer for the first time. They didn't play it growing up. They didn't watch it growing up because it just wasn't around and it wasn't relevant. So I think a lot of our job is to not only keep those avid soccer fans on board, but to keep those who are trying it out for the first time or giving it a shot, that it is worthwhile to stick around for the long term.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think I'll pass the next, going off that, Brittany, I'll pass the next question off. Rucci's going to ask.
Yeah, well, Brittany was saying feeds right into my question. So I was going to ask you guys, how does MLS sales and service differ from other professional sports in the U.S.?
I'll say I think it's a bit more of you have to work a little bit more for it. Again, as Britt mentioned, not everybody knows about the Philadelphia Union, especially in Philadelphia. A lot of times we're making that phone call. We have to say the soccer team in the area. People just think we're a union of sorts. So it's important that it's still a learning process for a lot of folks. And it's a learning process for our staff when they come in as well. You get people that maybe have never heard of the union that are coming in that know MLS is on the rise and doing great things. And so part of Darrell's job is going to be to recruit them and sell them on what we're doing at the union, and Matt prior to that with us as well. So it's once they get here, they love it. We have a pretty high retention rate from year to year. New season ticket members love it, but it's often a matter of getting them down here. A lot of the fans in MLS, a high majority are those season ticket holders, whereas if you're the Eagles, the Sixers, the Flyers, you've got a ton of fans and you've got a much bigger kind of net with the fan base in the Philadelphia area. So our job is to kind of widen that net ourselves and try and get more that are interested in the sport and the team.
So similarly down here, it's the same, but it's a little different. Like we have to do a lot of selling on who we are. The interesting thing we roll into is, we've got a football team, basketball team, and a baseball team, all of which you can think your own opinions on. We're the only ones that are ethical. Let's go. But at the same time, our major objection isn't necessarily like, oh, the Texans are right down the street. Our major objection is, oh, Liga MX is right down there. I would just drive 3 hours if I wanted to watch real soccer. So that's generally a massive thing we run into from time to time, which Darrell, Britt, Mark can attest to it. I never heard that in Philadelphia, mostly because that's nowhere New Mexico. But that's a big issue we have down here. So a lot of what we do is teaching more of how do we connect the two, or how do we connect, whatever player or whatnot. I think that's an area where we actually can make some money on, where not every team or every market has that ability. But to Mark's point, and Darrell and Austin can probably back this up, coming through the MLS, like I didn't, right? So you talk about how's it different from sport to sport. I didn't. So when I got there, it was a lot different. It's much more training intensive because it's not easy. It is easy to go be a rep for, I'm going to throw it out there, the Philadelphia Eagles is probably super easy to be a sales rep for, right? You won a world championship a couple years ago, win or lose, everybody loves you, right? It is not easy to be a rep in the MLS, and that's not a bad thing, but the people that are successful in the MLS are the people that want that challenge. And I think that's the first thing I learned when I first got there. I remember meeting Mark and Darrell and Britt on that first day, and immediately noticing that there was a lot different than my time in the NBA from that standpoint of everybody in the NBA was kind of just there and collected a paycheck, and it was just cool. LeBron would come to town a couple times a year, and everybody made good money, but there was only a few people there who actually wanted to challenge themselves and keep growing. And I think the MLS does a phenomenal job of doing that. I know internally we did a really cool job at the union, right? And then I think one of the coolest things to see is like Darrell took over what I left him with, and I know he's made it even better from that standpoint, right? So I think that's super cool that we talk about internal growth. Like the NBA is like, next piece, put the puzzle in, next man up, right? The MLS is very much more committed to growing their people as well. And I think that's super, super cool. But I would say that it's not necessarily as easy as it would be to go and sell basketball in Indiana or football in Philadelphia or New York, right? So I think that's one area where we look for those people who are up for the challenge because it makes everybody stronger from that standpoint.
Awesome. So I'm going to take a question here. So our first question I'm going to ask you guys are, given the delay in the season, what are some of the major challenges you are seeing in keeping fans engaged and ultimately back in the seats for the stadium?
I'll just jump in and say everything, but I'll let you guys handle it.
Yeah, in Philly, I mean, it's more about just kind of retaining, like having conversations with the folks. So we've been doing a lot, really from the second we were sent home on March 12th, just reaching out, checking in with our season ticket members, making sure their families are good. Everybody's healthy, everybody's staying busy and all that kind of stuff during this kind of weird time. It was a bit weird at first, I'll be honest, asking our staff to be reaching out on a sales front. So what they've been doing very much, even on the sales side, is really, again, just reaching out, trying to build rapport with some fans that they maybe reached out to in the past, or their new leads that they haven't been able to get in touch with. And generally, you kind of go through that 6-step sales process that Austin referred to nice and early on here. But it changes a little bit because you don't need to sell them right now. People are losing jobs. People aren't coming out to games. We don't have any games right now. So what I've asked our team and tasked our team with is really just trying to build that rapport and build your pipeline for when things get back to normal. And the hope is then that you've built a good relationship with somebody and they understand that you weren't reaching out just to sell them a product, that you were reaching out genuinely to see how they were doing, how their family's doing, what their life is like at home, and stuff like that. And I think it's gone a long way so far. We've seen some pretty nice posts on social media in terms of, hey, my union rep reached out for a third time over the last kind of month and a half. I haven't heard from my Sixers rep once, and stuff like that. And it's a kind of a feather in our cap to say, hey, that's what we need to do to go above and beyond, to be noticed and to be relevant in the city. And if it's going to take a little bit of extra hard work, even during a tough time, then it's worth it for us.
Yeah, going off that, speaking of that, during times like this and tragedies and different things, a lot of people turn to sports. So what we've tasked our team is to bring entertainment and value. Obviously, people can't really escape this. It's everywhere, wherever you go. So what can we do to help them pass the time, whether it's sending them things that they can do on the internet, things that they can do on Twitter or Instagram. So anything of entertainment or value that we can provide to help them through this. Like Mark said, to build that rapport, hopefully, obviously, keep them engaged as a customer. So when this does turn over and we're back on board, it's an easy conversation that you've already kept it going with this prospect instead of hopefully for some organizations and some teams, they're going to be picking up the phone for the first time in 4 or 5 months and trying to re-engage in these prospects. And some of them are not going to be very happy about that they're calling just for money and all of that. So we're hoping that our reps can kind of build that relationship now during this downtime, and hopefully it can lead to some bigger business once everything kind of turns around.
Planting those seeds and then coming to gather them later, kind of concept.
Yes, I wanted to kind of bring up a question that kind of relates to what everybody's been talking about from Finley Carroll. They're an English student studying in the United States, and their question is what the major differences and challenges are between selling an American soccer franchise compared to European football club, because obviously there's two different fan bases compared to the two different countries.
This is literally Mark. This is all up his alley.
Yeah, I figured Mark would be able to tackle this. If you kind of get
I'll give it
from those clubs.
I'll give it a whirl. I mean, listen, I like to think I'm pretty well versed in the Premier League and stuff like that. I was born over there. I have a lot of family over there still, and it's 100% different. They don't need to go out and sell Liverpool. The city sells it for them. They're so obsessed with it. You go 5 miles down the street and you see another club that sells thousands of tickets a game. It's just a different mindset. There's just not nearly as much kind of other entertainment as well. Obviously, they've got rugby, they've got cricket, and a couple of other sports like that, but nothing like over here when you've got football, basketball, baseball, hockey. So there's a lot less competition. They are starting to adopt, with all the American owners that you see now in the Premier League and other leagues around Europe. They're starting to adopt the American model a little bit, just because they're leaving money out there, and a lot more on the sponsorship side than on the ticket sales side. But until they kind of really take it on full force, it's going to be a different model. It'll be interesting to see kind of over the years and how they need to respond to something like this coronavirus kind of pandemic. They may need to go out there and start selling it again because people might be a little fearful of coming out to games. But there's just so much history. I'm not sure who mentioned it before, but like the NFL, I think it was Austin. The NFL has been around for 100 years. The MLS is just kind of celebrating our 25th season. Well, those leagues over in England have been around since the 1880s. So there's just so much more history. It's built into families. It's built into neighborhoods. So it's just it's very different to what we're dealing with over here for sure.
Yeah, I'll kind of pivot to another question. The World Cup is coming to the U.S. in 2026. In past years, we've seen a growth in soccer in the U.S. when there's been a World Cup. Maybe Mark can talk about this more too, but anyone can chime in. But kind of what that means for the MLS in terms of soccer engagement, more youth programs happening, and kind of what the future will hold for the MLS after that.
Yeah, for sure. So we were lucky enough to have Commissioner Don Garber come in and speak with our staff. What was that? Maybe early February. And he was speaking to the point that the World Cup in 2026 will have such a profound effect on American soccer, just in general, and MLS will hopefully reap the benefits from that. It's not often that you get kind of like that northern star in the sky that the league is really aiming towards, and that's from an ownership level, from an expansion level, from a ticket sales, TV contracts, everything is hoping to peak, and then obviously stay there as well, but really get to that maximum value in 2026. Every 4 years that I've been here with the union, there has been an uptick every time there's been a World Cup, just an interest. Your casual sports fan will get behind the World Cup, and then it's our job as a club to make sure that we take advantage of that in the coming months and years afterwards. So we certainly have seen that. We saw it in our launch year, which was fantastic in 2010. I think it really helped us get off the ground. And then most recently, even though the U.S. wasn't there in 2018, I think it was something that still garners a ton of attention here in the United States. So It's the league's goal to really grow and grow and grow and really kind of create excitement and hype around the league until that 2026. And then hopefully at that point, you let the soccer and the fandom kind of speak for themselves. It'll be even more impacted in cities that get to host World Cup games in 2026. I know Philadelphia is in the running. I know Houston is as well. I assume Denver out in Colorado as well. So hopefully all these cities can kind of take advantage of it and really continue to grow until then.
I think the other thing on that, like Mark just touched on in the last question, I think you see like leagues around the world are definitely more like community run, if that makes sense. And in America, it's a big business. So with like the 2026 World Cup, the MLS wanted to have all their expansion in place so that they've got 3, 4, 5 years with academies to be able to kind of get settled in. So I think right around that peak that Mark's talking about, even hopefully we stay there, like you said, but at peak, I think you'll see teams sold for a significant value, whereas right now it's just been expansion fees. So I think that will also like outlook for the league. All that money coming into the league will also be super helpful to keep making sure the talent is top notch compared to the rest of the world. I think that's one thing that was like super hard for me to wrap my mind around when I first came to Philly, was that we're not the greatest league in the world for our sport, like every other league in America pretty much is. But on the other end of that, there's like a million leagues in soccer, whereas basketball, there's like 3 leagues and then a bunch of like random dudes who just can't give up the dream overseas somewhere, right? So for, on top of all of what Mark said, for us to continue to take that next level, to stay on that peak, I think that'll be the cool aspect too, is when teams are being sold for $1 billion or whatever it is, and you've got that cash flow now of, let's say Darrell has $1 billion and buys a team. I'm sure he doesn't have $1 billion and $1, so he's going to make sure that team also has quality players coming into play as well. So I think the product on the field will continue to keep elevating to being one of the top leagues in the world at that point as well.
Yeah, just to touch on that, there was a question about how important it is to bring in some of these marquee players and kind of big names from that European league. How important do you think that is for the MLS, getting those players like Zlatan and Wayne Rooney in the MLS? In terms of,
I saw that question, and I think it's hilarious because the 3 teams here, I will never do that. But I mean, I'll put it on this one, but it's great. Like I mentioned it before we hopped in this call here. Like Chicharito basically sold out a game for us in the home opener. Galaxy's a big team, and it was a very nice, 78 degrees in late February, which you don't really have in places in the country. So like opposing players coming to town helps. We had Zlatan's last game last year as well, so it's just huge from that standpoint. Personally, I think it probably helps more for the opposing away teams, if that makes sense, in my opinion, because you can capitalize on your casual fans and try and get them in the door and then walk them up the sales ladder from that standpoint. Whereas if you have it from a home squad, let's say Brittany owns the Chicago Fire and decides to bring Bastian Schweinsteiger on board, that's great for a year, and then you drop off to being one of the worst teams with the worst ticket sales stuff going on in the league the year after. So the home squad, in my opinion, like it's cool for like a 1-year bump, but I think like the real impact comes on the away games. Tell me if I'm wrong there, Mark and Darrell and Britt, you've seen a lot of the games, so I don't know if you guys feel differently or not.
Hard.
I would agree. I mean, it's interesting because the union, like you said, that doesn't fit the model that we're looking to do. I think what our club is trying to do is be long-term, sustainable, something that is going to be around for a while. So going with the academy and building that up, the hope then is that you can then start to add in some of these top-line players. And whether that's as big as Zlatan, who knows? But if it's a U.S. men's national team player like Alejandro Bedoya, like we have, adding somebody in that kind of grabs the casual sports fan. Again, I know that's something that the league talks about a lot, is like, how do we take that next step? it's by getting the casual sports fan that, and sometimes that it takes a big name like a Wayne Rooney or a Zlatan. Obviously, we've all seen an uptick in ticket sales, like you mentioned, when those guys do come to town. Our biggest selling game in the history of the club was David Beckham's first appearance in Philadelphia. So they certainly make a difference. But 100% agree with what you said, Matt, that it can sometimes have a short-term effect if you don't kind of do it the right way and build around it properly, both from the soccer side and from the business standpoint. Because if you have one of those guys, it's an older guy, he's only playing for a year or two, he retires, you're going to lose a lot of those casual sports fans as well if you don't do it properly. So I think it helps, and it certainly helps grow the cachet of the league, but it has to be done properly. And I do think that MLS has done a really good job with that from the second they signed David Beckham to some of these other players that have joined the league over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I like what Matt said about how it's probably a lot better for the away teams, but then I think the Union's doing a great job, like what you said, Mark, with their academy and growing their players and making them how they want them to play. I think it's two very different styles, but it works for a number of different clubs. All right, I'll pass to Andrew for the next question.
Sure. So we're going to move on to kind of how you all have been adjusting to working from home. Obviously, it's different than an office setting, and you're not next to everybody, kind of feeding off each other. You're kind of by yourself. But how have you kind of adjusted to working from home, and especially trying to stay in contact with your leads or however you kind of go about it?
I guess I'll take this one. I think I'm the only panelist actually still actively making phone calls every single day. It's different. It's different for sure when you're sitting on your couch or sitting at your kitchen table and, you're calling someone and you're like, hey, what are you doing? How's it going? How's the family? But at the same point, it's just another thing you have to adjust to. I would say the first week it was weird, and now it just feels like everyday life. And honestly, fans are great. They understand where you're coming from, and you give them a call and they know you're home. They're concerned. They're like, hey, I hope you're working from home. So I would say that, like, from the atmosphere aspect, yeah, it's a little strange, but at the same point, connections that you make with people are still connections, whether you're making them in an office surrounded by your coworkers or whether you're making them at home. I would say from the atmosphere standpoint of like other coworkers, I miss everyone a lot, and it's definitely different not seeing everyone every day. But I think Mark's actually my manager, and I think he does a really good job of making sure everyone stays connected, whether that's like Zoom calls or text messages. So I think now, more important than ever, it's just a matter of staying connected the same way you would as if you were in the office.
Thanks, Britt. That was very kind of you to say. Management part of it is the hardest, right? So my job is to make sure that Brittany's happy, and when I'm sitting next to her in the office, that's a lot easier than it is when she's at her house in Philly. So what I've tried to do is, like Britt mentioned, is really just randomly do a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams kind of video chat throughout the day with the fan services team. And then on the season ticket sales team, we meet 5:15 every day on a video chat. We do daily trivia, which one of our guys used to do in the office all the time. And we kind of talk about our wins for the day just to make sure that everybody is still kind of optimistic, positive, and enjoying it. And yeah, there's some days where people are like, oof, I got one person on the phone for about 2 minutes out of the 30, 35 phone calls that I made today. And those are the tough days. And in the office, you can kind of combat that by kind of having those conversations with other folks. But if you're home with just you and your cat, you're not really talking to anybody for the next couple of hours. And then on the flip side, I don't know about Austin, but Matt and myself have young kids. That's another balancing act in itself, and making sure that you're kind of covering that side of things. And if I didn't kind of go down in the basement here, I'm sure my 18-month-old would have sat on my lap and tried to wave to everybody that we were video chatting with here. So it just creates another challenge that you don't generally have in an office environment.
Yeah, I'll agree. Britt said, you miss your coworkers. My current coworkers are a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and I keep having to mute because I'm worried my dog next to me snores like a jet plane, and so I have to keep waking him up. But this dog is old, so he just goes right back to sleep. But It is a massively weird adjustment. Now it feels normal, so it's going to be really weird when we do go back to an office. But we've tried to continue like business as normal for the most part. So we'll have like a quick morning meeting, and then everybody goes about their way. We've got a cool deal with Verizon where everybody's got their own company cell phone, so they don't have to feel weird about using their personal cell phone. So that's like one nice perk we have from that standpoint. So we've tried to continue to make calls. To Britt's point, we've been way more empathetic than trying to actually make a sale by any means. If the sale's there, fantastic. We're not going to turn down money. But at the same time, it's been more of checking in, making sure people are good, and kind of trying to develop your pipeline so that you're able to, come out of this thing in a better spot than when you left it. I think the other piece of it, which has been super cool, is I think everybody on this call can probably agree we have a bunch of more free time, which is not normal. So we've actually taken the chance to try and once a day, whether it's a half hour or an hour or whatever, do some type of training for our staff. So whether that's reading an article about XYZ, why pipeline management's important, or if it's more of a training over how you effectively utilize LinkedIn, or today they had one going on about the U.S. men's and women's national team and what is the link to being able to take people that buy tickets for those, since we have a lot of those games that happen in the winter time frame. How do we take people that buy tickets for those and transfer them over to the Dynamo now that we don't have DeMarcus Beasley playing for us every game like we used to, right? So what's that link? So I think on the other end of it, like Mark mentioned, we've got similarities and people running around. We've also got similarities. Mark's and I's team have been role playing on Microsoft Teams a couple times over the last week too. So taking the time to continue to try and invest in ourselves and our staff has been actually kind of a cool opportunity that's come out of this that we may have not necessarily had prior to this crazy thing going on.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to follow up, since we are working from home now, and as managers who are looking to hire people, would you say that in the future, since everybody can work from home now and it seems like everybody can do it efficiently, will there be days as a reward possibly, hey, you can work from home next Friday, and because you hit your sales goal and you topped it? Would that be a possibility?
Maybe. I got to get back to the office first before we figure that one out. But potentially, I do think you'll see, whether it's our industry or other industries, I think you're going to see more people that say, screw the brick and mortar office. We figured out how to make this work. Why pay rent for something? I'll just buy a fancy schmancy Zoom link, right? I don't know, but I think if anything, it taught us how to be a lot more mobile with our sales staff. So if somebody's, got something like a kid at home sick or something, I think we've shown the way of how to do it now, which normally it would have been just like, hey man, just take PTO and figure it out tomorrow. But if somebody doesn't want to do that, this is now an option. But I'm not sure if I got to figure out if I can come back on a normal week basis before I start talking about what's going to happen after that. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still trying to figure it out from that standpoint.
I agree with Matt. I think it just makes us a little more comfortable. If the option or anything does arise that, hey, you could stay home, make the phone calls and get all the work done. Obviously, I think where we are right now, I think everyone's probably itching to get back into the office, get back into socialization and the cultures that each one of our organizations have kind of developed. But I think it just makes it a whole lot easier now. If we have a game on a Wednesday night and, maybe, you're staying in a little bit Thursday, or like Matt or Mark said, maybe you have a kid and they're sick, or maybe you're not feeling great. Instead of having to kind of trudge to the office and grind through it, maybe you stay home and work from home and bang out the calls and emails and everything. So I think it just makes it it's now more of an option than it was ever before. I think it was always kind of a, hey, not really. But now I think it is kind of coming to the forefront as a viable option.
I have myself muted. I'm going to move it over to Alex.
Yeah, so I guess this is the type of question that is definitely on a lot of people's minds. And so the question basically is what do you think is going to happen because of the virus that's happening right now with just the process of hiring employees and interns? I know a lot of these questions in the chat box are just being asked about how should I go about being hired and this and that, and when applying for internships. And that's one of their biggest concerns, is just because of the virus, the impact that's going to have on hiring.
I mean, I can speak to it from kind of a high level. I mean, currently the union, we're in a hiring freeze. So generally in the next couple of kind of month and a half, Darrell would be starting his new inside sales class, or looking to hire his new inside sales class. That won't be happening currently, but I think grand scheme of things that it shouldn't really change too much at all. It might delay it a couple of months, but I don't think it's going to impact how we go about hiring in the future. If anything, we're going to need to sell even more tickets for 2021, because 2020 has been so strange already. So I think sales is one of those kind of parts of the business that isn't going anywhere, because as long as the sport's here, then you need to have sales folks, and maybe more than ever, you're going to need to actually have a good sales machine to make sure that people understand the value of coming out to union matches and to MLS matches in general. So while it might be delayed a little bit, and I get that is going to be tough for those that are kind of in graduating college now or looking to get into the job field via an internship, just because you don't get something by graduation date of May doesn't mean you're not going to get something in the fall or winter. It took me probably about 6 or 7 months after I graduated from college to get my first job with the Soul. So this might have delayed it to a 10, 11 month process, but I certainly don't think it'll impact it in the grand scheme of things.
Agree with Mark. I think Matt mentioned we have more time than ever now. So I don't want to speak for Austin, but I get a lot of emails now, and I have more time to communicate and chat with prospecting people. So I'm building up my pipeline, just like I hope my sales guys are as well. So hopefully when this does end and we need to hire and get back, the hiring freeze is over, hopefully it's like I've talked about with my sales reps, I'm continuing that conversation with hopefully prospects that we've already had conversations with. We've exchanged maybe a Zoom meeting, maybe a couple phone calls, emails. So more about on my end, keeping those in kind of in the pipeline on my bench. So when this does end, we can pick it up and get rolling as quick as possible.
I think to echo that on what Darrell said, we're doing the same thing down here. Our inside sales manager has been continuing to interview, whether it's for internships or for inside sales candidates. Like them, we're also on a hiring freeze. I think a lot of that goes to I think two of the huge revenue source, the two most big revenue sources for a team in MLS is going to be ticket sales and sponsorship. And right now, one of those is also frozen. So without having kind of all that money to be able to hire people, I think that's why we're currently in a hiring freeze. I don't know how many teams are like that. I know we are as well, but for us, we know we're also going to come out of it. So we're not really that worried. It's like Mark said, it's going to be delayed like maybe a month or two. But from that standpoint, our guys down here are still continuing to interview and keep people in the pipeline so that when we're able to, we're ready to go ahead and get you signed up.
Yeah, I think for for students, this is a double-edged sword. Of course, the timeline might be pushed, but there's no better time than now to be able to get in front of Darrell, Matt, Mark, Brittany, and myself. Like Darrell and Matt said, we have more time. So that means we have more access to being able to have quick 30-minute conversations and learn your story. And when that timeline and these jobs pop back up, because there will be a 2021 season, right? So how are you preparing yourself best to go take action and get your name, like Alex, Andrew, and Cory, I now know. So if I see them in a job candidate pool, or, they know they want to help going to talk to another team and I have a connection there, I am more willing to now go help them because I actually know them a little bit, rather than they're just attacking via LinkedIn or shooting an email blindly to get a job when, you have a couple months to really lay the groundwork, build your brand, and really network and learn about different cultures and learn about different teams and almost interview the teams themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Austin, what you just mentioned there too is that there's so much free time now that everyone has. So I think we all are able to take advantage of that, just to reach out and do little things and just blindly connecting with people on LinkedIn. I think that's something that all of us prospective students can learn from too. So after that, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew right here, basically kind of just feeding into the LinkedIn and networking type questions.
Yeah, Austin kind of jumped the gun. He answered the question before I asked it. But no, if anybody else would like to expand on that, how important it is to kind of make LinkedIn connections, especially informational interviewing, because I know personally I've been doing it since my freshman year, and it's helped me out tremendously. I've gotten so many good connections just through reaching out on LinkedIn, saying, "Hey, I'd like to pick your brain." So what kind of things can you give to kids like freshmen, sophomores, any college student, or even professionals now to kind of reach out and expand their network?
I think, if you're younger in kind of your studies and being a freshman, sophomore, I think it's great to reach out to reps already in the industry, right? Or go to a manager, learn their background, learn their story, ask what they look for, start crafting those questions and learning about the industry and really starting to gain some keywords and knowledge, so that when you do start approaching those junior and senior conversations of internship opportunities and career moves, you're now putting yourself in a better light of understanding the industry, understanding how it works a little bit more because you've done the groundwork. I always look for creative, output and outreach as well. I think that shows me if you can creatively do your research or reach out to me that way. How are you going to approach going out to clients? What your follow-up process? Are you emailing me every 2 days, or are you emailing me once every week and a half? And is it the second follow-up with an article, or, hey, saw you guys launched this 6 months ago. How did you guys come up with this idea of this membership program? Or, really thinking granular questions to really learn more about the industry shows me a lot of personal qualities that we look for, right? If you're wanting to go in sales, we can teach you the sales part, but we can't teach you the intangibles.
Yeah, agree with Austin. Obviously, we probably both work with Teamwork Online, so we probably get a bunch of submissions, applications. Put a face to the name. Put a face to the application. It's so much easier to trust you or know what you're about or how you could work if I worked with you before. So like Austin said, if you're a freshman or sophomore, if you can volunteer on game day, I know the Union, I'm guessing Colorado and Houston the same way. You're always looking for game day volunteers, always looking for people on staff. So if you can get in there and work on game day, and then, hey, say something quick to Mark or Brittany or myself or Matt or Austin, say, hey, I'm glad to work here today. I'd be interested in ticket sales or whatever it is. And then you keep having that conversation, keep building that rapport. At the end of the day, if you look at what we all do, we're all in sales and we all build rapport. So if you want to do that, you can build rapport with us and help yourself. So that's the biggest thing that I would mention, is just building that rapport, networking, especially if you're a freshman and sophomore. Get out there early. If you're a junior or senior and you're picking this up a little bit late, don't just send on Teamwork Online or send an email. See if you could connect. See if you can have some FaceTime or a phone call to put that face or that name to the application.
Yeah, who's going to take advantage of having 5 successful people in this organization talk to you now? Is it a follow-up email? How are you going to address that? So look for those opportunities when you do these panels and things like that, to go do some research. See if you can find Darrell's direct email or shoot him a LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think that's all pretty useful information for anyone going forward, especially in our positions right now. We are getting close to the end here, but I'll touch on one question. Since you guys are all from different clubs, well, there's 3 clubs here. How much teamwork and communication is there between clubs and the MLS on the sales side? I think this can kind of go into any kind of league or sports team. Do you guys just want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say to start, I learned in Philly, there's one team you don't like, and they're just up the road in New Jersey. And then coming down here, I've learned there's a second team you don't like, who is up the road in Frisco, but uses also a different city to go by. So really, how many of the clubs there are at this point, 2 of them I just don't care about. But I do think there's a lot of, so like in the NBA, they would have like monthly calls with inside sales managers, group managers, whatever. The MLS didn't really have that. I know one of our guys down here, inside sales manager, he started that for our inside sales managers around the league. And I know Austin and Darrell are on those calls. I don't know what the number's up to, but I think it's like 11 or 12 people are on that call now. Not necessarily every team has an inside sales program, mostly because some of them are like the newer teams don't really need necessarily that academy. Unfortunately, we're able to sell the new shiny object pretty well by themselves at the moment, whereas teams that are around for a little bit longer, you'll definitely see inside sales clubs inside sales teams be there. So I do know that that's been going on. Like I mentioned earlier, we've collaborated with a lot of teams at this point in terms of just getting on a call together and role playing. So you'll see a lot of club togetherness, if you will, across any league, I would assume, having seen it in 2 different leagues. Like I know Mark and I are on these calls every week right now, like once a week where we're just getting updates. But while we're on those calls, I also know those calls aren't the first time those have ever happened. There's always been like a ticketing call usually with like the VP of a ticket sales department. So there's a lot of collaboration. I think one of the nice things about the sports industry is, for Darrell or Austin, they're recruiting against people to try and get, straight out of college or whatever to come to their team. For Mark and I, we're probably recruiting other teams' best people away from those teams to come be reps for us or be managers for us. So there's kind of that fun little competitive rivalry going on, but at the same time, I don't think anybody likes to reinvent the wheel. So if there's let's say, Cory, you work for a different, MLS team, and I'm like, hey man, really think what you guys did is super cool on this group night or this, season ticket benefit. Would love to connect for 5-10 minutes and get your thoughts on it. There's a ton of that goes on amongst all the leagues. I don't think that's what's the word I'm looking for? That's not native to the MLS by any means. So there's a lot of collaboration within the industry. We're all obviously trying to make our way to the top. So it's also like a pseudo little networking opportunity too from that standpoint. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a ton of it from that aspect.
Yeah, I think
I was just going to say, I totally agree. It's interesting because I feel like you do a lot more interleague networking than you do like with other teams in the city. So like I'd much rather hop on a phone call with Matt and his team down in Houston, because we're, 1, selling the same kind of product, but 2, we're not kind of rivaling for the same fan base here in Philadelphia. The league does a really good job outside of the phone calls that Matt mentioned. Every year on the fan services side, they've got a workshop that kind of rotates around the country that myself, Darrell, Britt have all gone to a number of times. And it's just kind of talking about best practices throughout the league. They don't do that on the new season ticket sales side, which when I kind of took season ticket sales back under my wing, I reached out to the folks at the league office to see if we could do something similar. And I think there was certainly some intention before all this coronavirus stuff hit here. But the league does a really good job of trying to network and create best practices. And quite frankly, if I'm hiring somebody, similar to what Matt just said, I'd much rather hire somebody that has done well in selling soccer and in certain marketplaces than somebody maybe that hasn't kind of dealt with that before. So if it's not coming from our inside sales program, then I would look to certainly maybe reach out to Matt and say, hey, are you guys, like, is there anybody on your team that you think would be a great fit that just kind of has hit a roadblock in Houston that maybe there isn't a position open, you're not hiring? Is there somebody that you think would be a good fit up here in Philadelphia? And I think the league does a good job of allowing that as well.
Yeah, I think those are great points you guys touched on, especially just in terms of like networking, kind of like, I forget who said it, but everyone seems to know each other. Obviously, with Matt moving to Houston from Philadelphia, I mean, people move in our industry constantly. So you can make a meaningful impact on that person. Kind of like what Austin says, that now he knows us. You can kind of speak on us a little bit. That's really good going forward. Does anyone else have any kind of advice you'd like to share before we leave some closing remarks? Or
I'll make one last point on what you just said. Don't burn a bridge. This industry, it's not a industry that's like, oh, everybody knows everybody. It's like, Dr. J, don't quote me on this either. It's like incest. Like everybody knows everybody to a really weird extent. it is super weird how many people you'll know after like even just 2 years. So don't ever burn a bridge from that standpoint either. So if Mark's asking me, hey, you got anybody down there that would be a good fit, and I'm like getting him somebody taken care of, if that person, gives me the bird on the way out the door, I obviously know Mark, right? And then on top of that, then Mark inherits that. So that's a big piece of it too, whether you're leaving college or leaving a job or going to a different industry. It's super weird how all this stuff is like incredibly connected, and you have that small world moment all the time. To give you a reference here, like one of Mark's old reps, as I was leaving, said, hey, I got a friend that works for the White Sox. She's looking to get closer to home, or closer to her family, which is in Mexico. And then boom, I hired her very quickly, right? So it's one of those things where like the industry is super weirdly intertwined, and now I know plenty of people at the White Sox, so which are the best team in baseball. So then I know all those people now. So it gets really, really weird how tight this industry is. So when you are networking and stuff like that, like make sure you're putting your best foot forward and you've kind of prepared from that standpoint. Or if you're leaving a job, don't leave on any bad notes either.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. I think that's a great point. So I want to thank you guys for joining us on this panel. I want to thank all the viewers for hanging out, and hopefully you guys took as much of this as we did. I would like to invite everyone to join us in the post-game room, Zoom room. The link is right there. You have any? I know we didn't get to all the questions, but hopefully we can answer some in that Zoom room. And just again, follow us and tag us in anything you post. We have our Instagram and Twitter at right there, NUSM460. And that Zoom room will be hosted by our friends over at Neumann Media. They've been gracious enough to put that together and host it. So I'll just say thank you all again from all of us, and I hope you guys had a great time.